Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Dirty Decibels podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm rounding out the season here. I think we just got maybe one more episode left after this, but tonight I am joined by my good friend Analise Stettner. She's joining me from Providence, Rhode Island, and she is a master mixologist, um, creator of all things craft cocktails, and she's also gotten into a whole bunch of DIY baking, baked goods, and I'm super stoked to have you on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
uh,
Master yes. You're too kind.
well, I've tasted some of the creations you've made, and that's the only words that I can use. So,
Thank you.
how is things down in Providence, Rhode Island?
Things are good. It's nice to be like finally getting back to some sort of a normal after COVID. I didn't work for a really, really long time.
Yeah,
I'm finally just about to like really dive back into it. So good.
yeah,
Things are great.
yeah, for sure. So much of like the podcast, well, I mean, this podcast is about art, and this year it's been such an interesting, like, it's been a lot of interesting conversations with people who make art because of COVID. And like
Yeah.
one of the major things that I thought I haven't talked about in the show really yet is the art of food and beverage, which is in every sense of the word an art, and is so crucial to like not only how we like enjoy ourselves and communicate with each other and all that stuff, but it's also a huge sector of life that's been impacted by the pandemic in a
Yeah.
really profound way, just like music and music and art and filmmaking and everything else that has felt the effects of this pandemic. And first and foremost, I think looking at the service industry and how this has affected the service industry is like so relevant and so important to like help people understand.
Yeah. I mean, it'll probably never be the same if I'm being honest. Um, it's crazy to hear about, especially living in Providence, where there's such a really dense food and beverage scene here, mostly because of Johnson and Wales, one of the leading culinary institutes in America. So there's tons of people that are coming out of Johnson and Wales and staying in Providence and working at bars and restaurants around here, starting their own bars and restaurants. So it's a pretty big scene, but it's pretty tight. So it's tough to see a lot of places that I loved struggle, or some of them have even gone under. And now, as Rhode Island's reopening, a lot of places are strapped for staff, much like the rest of America.
Yeah,
Hurting right now. Everyone's understaffed. So it's tough, but we're getting there.
yeah, it's
It'll
kind of
take a really long time for the industry to like come close to what you would call recovering from this.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's almost kind of been like a boom, like a sort of like a slingshot effect or whatever, like where everything swung one way, where everything closed down, and it's like now it's sort of to be expected. I would think that it's going to be hard to find people to just come back right away.
Yeah, a lot of people have moved on, and a lot of people are still looking for other outlets to go down, because not only was this a tough industry to like do before the pandemic, but now there's added risk. Granted, like most people are vaccinated and whatnot now, but I personally, thankfully, am not dealing with this because we're just lucky at Tiny Bar. But a lot of people are coming back, who maybe people who have never worked in the service industry before, that are impatient and rude with the staff because it's understaffed and it's going to take longer for you to get service.
Right.
So you're dealing with angry customers a lot of the time, and
Right.
not a lot of money. And that just brings it back to like the wage inequality in the US, which is a whole nother conversation. But you can't expect people to work for $2 an hour and wear a mask and eat their lunch over a trash can on a 12-hour shift,
Right.
when they go do something else that's easier and make more money and not be berated. So
Yeah. Yeah, for
it's
sure.
tough.
I think this pandemic has like really shown a spotlight on the fact that the way that we like work pay in the service industry is so backwards compared to so many other countries, that it's this tipped based work that has a lower pay rate than all the other minimum, the rest of minimum wage even, or most other places. And it's kind of, I hope at least some people have started to become more aware of that now.
Yeah, I agree. It's like it's a tough thing to like really have a true opinion on, because I think given the choice, I would still rather work for tipped wages. I make more doing that.
Well, oh, of course. Yeah.
Because I care about what I do and I have passion for the industry. And generally, obviously there's a gamble there when you're working tipped wages, but generally I do rather well for myself. I think it falls more on the employer than it does like the government making a minimum wage for it or whatever,
Yeah.
Employers can provide, it's not impossible to provide healthcare, or just take care of your staff, provide a minimum. You're going to have those nights where you get rocked all night, you're six deep, and you walk with rent for the month in one night. That's not uncommon. However, there are still going to be nights where you get busted, and people maybe don't tip at all on some of their tabs. Maybe the weather's bad and it's just really slow. Maybe it's a post-holiday weekend and nobody's going out this week because they all went out last week, and you still have to pay your bills. So at that point, it really turns to the employer, in order to keep good staff, give a guarantee. Say, if you aren't gonna make enough money on tips to make it worth it, I'll cover it for you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Stuff like that. Like just ways to kind of look at it going forward and be like, okay, like we want to make it worth your while to like stay here and work here, and try to keep everybody better protected should something like this ever happen, God forbid, happen again too.
Exactly. And that's how you're going to keep your staff happy and keep good people around. The service industry has tons of people that it's like a rotating door at a lot of different restaurants. I've been working in bars and restaurants since I was 14, so 16 years. I've worked in a lot of different places. Some of them for like not very long at all for one reason or another. And if you make it good for your staff, your staff will stay.
Right.
And happy employees equals happy customers.
Totally. Everybody's attitude is better. Everybody's in better spirits. Everybody's in a better mood. Like it just makes for a more pleasurable environment. Like people are going to want to come back,
Exactly.
I think that's a good segue though into talking about, I wanted to ask you a little bit about how you kind of came to work in this field, and how you kind of got interested and passionate about mixology and bartending and everything that you've done.
Well, okay, so my first legal like on the books job was scooping ice cream. And it was an addendum to another restaurant that was like a fried chicken joint in my hometown. And the ice cream shop only lasted one summer because it was just kind of off the beaten path. There was already a couple other ice cream shops in town, and they didn't want to let me go. I was like a freshman in high school. So I started working at the wing joint, and it was a college town. I grew up in Durham, New Hampshire. It was UNH. It was kind of a party restaurant. Like it's college kids coming to get like 50 wings and 3 pitchers of beer with their buddies to like watch the hockey game.
Right, right.
So I kind of fell into slightly bartending before I really could.
Yeah.
So I did that all through high school, just kind of like cracking beers and serving wings. And I mean, I didn't like love it, but I didn't hate it either. And then went to school and I went to school in New York City. I worked retail for a little while and was absolutely miserable because there's really no outlet for creativity there.
Right.
I don't want to board fold shirts all day. I would rather, be able to like talk to people and be passionate about something that I'm putting out in the world.
Yeah.
So I went back to just waitressing, and eventually I got trained on the bar, ended up like really, really liking the environment. And I grew up cooking. My parents were really big cooks. And so I really liked to cook too. And I kind of related that to like learning how to make different cocktails. So it just kind of snowballed from there and just grew and grew and grew as like an interest and turned into a passion and like a career, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I think the environment of, I think it's funny because you can think about a sports bar like you just described where people are coming in with a bunch of buddies and it's loud and rowdy and people are just getting pitchers of beer and wings and like being kind of obnoxious or doing whatever, watching a game on TV or whatever. But there's plenty of other times where I can think of the bar and the environment between patrons and bartenders, especially in smaller local places where there's a lot of regulars and there's a lot of people from the
Mhm.
community and kind of like, towny bars and stuff like that. Where,
Yeah.
like I would compare the relationship between like bartender and patron very similar to like in a barber shop or a hair salon,
Yes.
where there's that like it's therapy in a way that it's the drinks are only the catalyst for whatever the relationship and the communication that's going on is.
Yeah. I mean, the drinks are like the reason to be there. But like that's like the base reason. And then there's just so much more to benefit from after that. Like you said, with community, I have been fortunate to make so many relationships with coworkers, with previous regulars that have like continued to come visit me at multiple different bars as I've moved throughout my career so far. And I wouldn't have that if I had stuck in retail. So
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
definitely thankful for that. And it's probably, I mean, aside from the creativity of like of mixing cocktails and making food and whatnot, the community and meeting people and the socialization is definitely the most rewarding part.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I hope that it's something too that well, and I think it is something too that like people have it come to be a little bit more aware of because of the pandemic too, and like
Yeah.
realizing that that's missing that element from their life and being like,
Oh yeah. I think
whoa,
a
like
lot of us that I know I did from both ends too.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, so you talked a little bit before about like kind of the food and beverage community in Providence. And Providence is a really neat city it's definitely like a foodie city and a drink city for sure. Um, and I know my experience with it has only been like extremely brief. Do you want to talk a little bit about what it's been like down there since you've been down there? And I mean, I know you kind of weren't there for too long before the pandemic started, right? Like maybe about a year or
Let's see. So I moved here fall of 2018. I
okay.
started bartending in Providence specifically that winter. So yeah, I had like about maybe 15 months. Is that right? No.
Sounds it about like a year and a
Yeah.
half. Yeah, like a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, like a year and a half. And then the whole last year, man, it's just like all
Oh,
blurred
childish.
together. It's like hard to think about it, but I really didn't work for like a year. I mean, I didn't work at all for 5 months. I
Yeah.
got laid off like everybody else in
Yep.
March of last year, and then was welcomed to the Tiny Bar team in the fall and was able to work through the fall with them. But then winter came and we're all outdoors.
Right.
Plus, COVID was still pretty rampant, especially in Rhode Island. So we closed for a couple months and then had to deal with winter and tents. So I'm really just getting back to work now that the
Yeah.
weather is. But
Um,
to go back to like the Providence scene, it's wonderful. I have met so many people, and I've learned a lot since I've been here. Um, it's like it's cool. I like it here a lot more than I thought I would, and I don't think I really realized how good the food and beverage scene was here before I moved. And I'm only from New Hampshire,
right.
but
Yeah.
really know anything about Providence, and
Yeah.
super fun.
I grew up like, you know, going down there and hanging out there a lot, but because I was a kid, it was really just like to go to a concert or like to go, hang out at a friend's house or whatever. Like we weren't really old enough to go out at the time, but I've always like been connected to it through family and through friends and stuff like that. And it's always been every time I've been there since, like now as an adult, like almost every place I've gone to, I feel like has been awesome. Probably
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 different bars that I can't remember all the names of, but have been really cool in their own right.
Yeah, I mean, Providence is like there's so many places here. I wonder actually how long it would take you to visit every place in the city. Maybe not every place, but my list. But my
Yeah.
list would be very long.
Well,
Uh,
what about like could you do like a top 5?
a top five
Yeah, like if you were gonna recommend right now for somebody to come down to Providence, what would you like your top 5 be?
for like food or cocktails or both.
What?
That's the
Well,
thing is like there's something for everybody in Providence. If you want something casual, if you want something really fancy, if you want to just get a cocktail, or if you're not really interested in cocktails and you just want food, there's amazing food here too. I guess so for cocktail list, um I would definitely have to go with the Avery. It's probably my number one because it's the first bar that I ever went to in Providence when I moved here. And it's right near my house. I love their people. I love their program. The environment in there is just magical. It's super cool. Second, probably the Eddie. Um, what other places do I love? My cat's going nuts over there. I would be remiss if I didn't plug Tiny Bar in there because I work there, but I didn't write the menu, so I can say that it's really good. So those are all like great cocktail places. If you want like really cool bar environment, Scurvy Dog always. Um,
the Scurvy Dog.
the Scurvy Dog.
Okay, cool. I gotta check that place out too.
It's like the towny punk bar. They have outdoor shows in their parking lot. It's like right next to the highway, like dark, a little grungy, like, but they're fun and it's a good place to get a beer. What are some of my other favorite places?
I mean, that's a pretty good list so far.
I'll throw a few more out there as they come to me.
I always love the places that are like what you just described. Towny casual dive,
Yeah.
unsuspecting is the vibe.
Yeah.
But that has like bomb food or like really good drinks or like something about it that is really like like that, like they're really good, even just like the places where you can get like the $2 or $3 Gansett or whatever,
Yeah.
but you can still get like a nice cocktail if you want it. You know what I mean? Like they don't disappoint on any front.
I mean, one of those places would actually be, I think, all around one of the great places because Scurvy Dog is like, it's beer and a shot, one liquor drinks. They don't have food. They might have like bags of chips or something, but that's like fun. But the Slow Road, I don't know if you've heard of that place, but it's also in the West End. They have really small menu, but it's awesome. It's local, curated, affordable. They have everything from like snacks, sandwiches, and like a couple main courses. And you can get like, I think you can get like a $3 Gansett, or you can get a really nice cocktail with like good quality ingredients.
Yeah. Those places
So that's definitely another favorite.
Yeah, nice. Those places are always what I find the most enjoyable or like the most satisfying to be in,
Yeah.
Just a place where like you can like hang out and not, it's like it has something to offer for everybody, but it's not like, it doesn't take itself too seriously. It's not pretentious or anything like that, but like you have a spectrum, right? Like you can get,
Yes.
you know. So I'm always super down for those places. Um, I feel like drinking like cocktails and alcohol and food also are like huge factors in talking about like the way everyone's dealt with this pandemic sort of internally too. Like this thing happened. We all got laid off from our jobs, or we all started working from home, or we all found ourselves inside all the time when this thing started. And it seems like, you know, what was the natural first thing that everybody started to turn to? It was like cooking and making, like drinking and eating, like,
Yeah.
you know, because that's what you do. Like
To survive.
our human nature is like, when you're happy you drink and eat, when you're sad you drink and eat. Like it is the like comfort for all things, you know. um and I know like we have a group of friends that started this um hey good looking what you cooking like
Yes.
Facebook group, right? So we're all like sharing recipes and like stuff like that. um and it's been really cool. Like I've learned a whole bunch of stuff in the past year, just about like little things, like how to make some random stuff that I didn't really ever make before. I don't, you know, everybody was on, there were fads, right? Like there were trends, like everybody was on
Yeah.
like banana bread or
Oh,
like
I learned
whipped
how to
coffee or like whatever.
like the rest of America.
Yeah, but I had never actually made it before. Like I'll be perfectly honest, like I didn't know shit about making banana bread. I don't, it's not bread, it's cake. Like I mean, pretty much. um but it's cool. It's cool. And one of the things that you have done a lot with like baking bread, right? And English
Mhm.
muffins, bread, sourdough, stuff like that. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how like you kind of got inspired to do some of that stuff too.
Yeah. Well, so I guess, I mean, I think I don't know where I got the idea. It was probably from the internet right at lockdown. It was like, okay, well, what are we gonna do now? I can't leave my house, and I already love to cook. Like, what should I do? And I decided to like learn how to make sourdough bread. And I was really, really intimidated at first. I had no idea how like how to make a starter, or how like you really have to like, in order to do it right, you have to weigh out all your ingredients. I had never used a kitchen scale before. Truth be told, I don't really measure that many things in general. I usually just, when you're cooking, you kind of have the freedom to kind of just eyeball things and like do what
Right.
feels right. But when it comes to baking, it's much more of a science. And you know, if you put too much baking powder in something, it's not going to cook right. So you have to measure it out. And it was just a science that I had never ventured into yet. So I actually hit up my friend Cheryl Kelly, because she had been making sourdough for years, and she coached me through the whole thing via Facebook Messenger, and like told me how to do it. She actually ended up sending me to King Arthur Baking, and they have a help hotline
Oh
on their
wow.
website
That's
that you
cool.
can, if you are learning how to, if you're trying to bake bread or make anything really, you can call them and they'll connect you to one of their bakers, and you can talk to a real person and they'll help you do whatever you're struggling with.
That's fucking rad though. That's
So
so cool.
that helped a lot. And I definitely gained some weight right at the beginning of quarantine because I was eating all of my mistakes and the bread was not that good in the beginning. But then I kind of got the hang of it and I started feeling more comfortable with like with doing it every week. And Derek challenged me to make bread every day for a week. So I did that. And after that, I think I definitely like hit a new level and was just like, okay, this is how you do it.
That's a pretty steep challenge.
It
Bake bread
was
every day for a week.
it was like hitting up my neighbors and friends being like, can I give you bread? Like I can't know what to do with all of this bread. And they were like happy to take it. So it worked out.
Yeah.
But after I did that, I felt a little bit more comfortable venturing out and trying other things. And like I learned how to make English muffins, and I did and Adama bread. I learned how to make challah, which I like nailed on the first shot and was very proud of.
All right. Well,
Um,
you're gonna have to make more of that and
I will.
let me try some because I fucking love challah, and
Hollow French
it
toast.
is not a bread that I ever get to have. Like I've had it maybe three
Yeah,
times in my entire life, and it's so good. And
it's so good.
yeah,
I'll
that's
make you
rad.
some. I'll make you some.
My mom's side of the family is Italian. My grandmother, when I was growing up, lived with us for most of the year. Usually, she was with us a lot, and we were definitely a family, like you mentioned before, like your parents loving to cook and stuff like that. Like we were a family that had a very specific like relationship with food and with eating and with each other over food. Like it's a, I don't want to get weird and be like it's a spiritual experience, but like it's something
It
but it's something that's on a deeper level, right? Like
is.
food
Mhm.
being not only like a comfort when you're sad or when you're happy or when whatever, but like just being um a central point in like a family's relationship or relationships between people or like friends or whatever. Um and so it was completely second nature to me to be like when this pandemic started to like immediately turn to food and food as like an answer for things,
Yeah.
you know. And I just think it's interesting to talk about it. Like I just love talking about how it's affected different people and how they've uh learned more about it or like gotten more into it or like what it's meant to them throughout their lives, you know. Bread is like one of those things that's it's like a staple too, right? Like it's just like
Yeah, it's like the oldest food there is. This is what like kept people alive in like the Middle Ages, and like, sometimes all you could afford what was bread. If you were a peasant, you could get bread, and if you were really lucky, you could get a little block of cheese, and that was like your
yeah.
sustenance for your whole family for the week.
Yeah.
So it's definitely really important.
I was thinking about what you said before too, like about the recipes. Like my grandmother was notorious for that. Like the everything that she ever wrote down as a recipe was like by feel, like by
Yeah,
how it, like everything was
look
like
at it. Just do what feels right.
there was always that element to it, like that human element where it's like you make it what it is just
Mhm.
because of the way you make it.
Yeah. I mean,
I,
as I've like gotten older, especially over the last year, I've started writing down what if I make something for dinner and it comes out really, really good, I'll like sit down after and like think, okay, what exactly did you do? And I will just make educated guesses if I don't know on like how much I did so that I can like try to replicate it again. But one of my favorite things to do when I'm like, okay, I want to make this specific dish, I will go onto the internet and look up a bunch of different recipes and kind of like Frankenstein them together in my own way and just create my own version of it. If that makes any sense.
no, it makes total sense. I've done it a bunch of times. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
kind of what I do all the time.
yeah. I don't want to follow just one straight recipe. I want to look at a bunch of different ones and pick which parts sound the best and then just like, mesh it all together
Yeah,
into.
absolutely. Um, for me personally too, I've been vegetarian for the last few years, so I've had a whole experience like, and I find it really fun. Like a lot of people are like, well, why try to take something that has meat in it and make that same thing, like just make something different. But I love taking traditional recipes and like just adapting them to be vegetarian, or
Yeah,
sometimes adapting them to be completely vegan, like not even using dairy too, like just because like I just enjoy it. I enjoy like, let's take this thing like chicken marsala that everybody loves, that's a staple kind of like classic food, and just like make
yeah,
it vegetarian. Like what different stuff can I do? Like it's awesome.
yeah. I mean, like there's something to be said too for the amount of vegan and vegetarian substitutes that are available now,
Yeah.
pretty widely. Like, I mean, I think it used to be a little bit harder. I stopped eating meat when I was 13, and I was vegetarian for 6 years, and then started eating fish again. So I've been pescatarian for 11 years now. And I remember being a teenager And even in like my early 20s, kind of being limited to just like a very small certain number of things that I could use for like, I could go get my veggie chicken nuggets and my veggie burgers if I wanted to, but like I didn't know what tempeh was. I didn't know what seitan was then. And I'm sure it was a thing, but it just wasn't knowledge that was like readily available to me.
Right.
So now I'm like, I follow all of these like vegan food blogs that use like oyster mushrooms to make like vegan pulled pork. And it's mind blowing and it's exciting. And I'm the same way. I love changing like classic meat recipes into like a vegan or vegetarian version.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so
And
good.
and being like, yeah, isn't that good?
The barbecue jackfruit blows my mind too. Like how it's like super, it's so much like pulled pork. Like it's like that
Yeah.
same stringy consistency. And it's not like, I'm not a person that, like, I never really liked meat anyway. Even when I was eating it, like I didn't care for it. I was like, I'm like a starch fiend. I just love like pasta and potatoes and like anything that's like starchy, like carbs. Like that's just like when bread and like that's what I love. Rice
Bread
and
butter.
rice, couscous, pasta, whatever. But like, so I'm not chasing after. I'm not like that person that's like chasing after a perfect substitute for meat. I don't care about that. But I think it's cool because it's like, hey, maybe it'll help entice more people out there to like move away from a meat diet and move more into a plant-based diet if you have
Yeah.
lots of stuff that tastes very similar and is still as satisfying to eat for them for whatever reason. I mean, I'm fine with like diced tofu replacing almost any meat in a meal, but like if it helps bring more people on board, hey, not a bad thing. That's like kind of my approach to it.
Yeah.
It's just something that like people connect with, that I do consider it an art. I think food and beverage,
But
as much
absolutely.
as much as they are a science too, like they're an art, and they're a really important art through all of this. And I'm happy to cover this subject on the podcast and talk about this because it's something I kind of didn't think about until kind of recently,
Yeah.
to really dive into it.
Well, it's definitely a form of self-expression. And you can really go down any route you want to with it. When I was still living in New Hampshire, I had the privilege of working at Stages at One Washington for several years, mostly doing catering. But the chef and owner operator of the place is a man named Evan Hennessy, who is a James Beard nominated chef, and a Chopped winner.
Oh,
And
nice.
he's fantastic and really down to earth, smart guy, and he's from the seacoast, and he turned his passion of the outdoors and cooking and kind of brought them together. And most of the plates that they put out there are foraged locally from, he goes down to the beach in Rye and forages seaweeds to use for broth. And he'll go hiking with his dog and find mushrooms and all sorts of different things that he can put towards his dishes. And that was really, really inspiring for me, and probably played a big part in what made me want to continue down a more elevated path as far as like food and beverage goes.
Yeah.
Because I started working for him when I was 22. So I was really new to bartending. I was working at kind of a sports bar at the time, and I got this job catering weddings and was able to see firsthand all of this work that he puts into just a plate that has like one bite on it. And it's absolutely art.
Yeah.
It's definitely art. And it was inspiring because that's what he loved to do.
Yeah. It's so enjoyable to watch people do what they love,
Mm-hmm.
in any field, like whether it's music or it's painting or it's whatever. But I think food and cooking has probably always been one of my favorites, and it's also probably again because of the way I grew up and like watching my
Yeah.
grandmother and my uncle and my mom and my aunts like connect with food in a special way that's like more than just, cooking something to eat it. Like there's something else there.
Well, it's a big part of a lot of different cultures is the food.
Yeah. I remember some of what every once in a while when I would work some type of event that was actually catered by a guy like that, like a real actual someone who cares about what they do and like is an independent catering company or an independent
Yeah.
catering service that like puts their effort and their heart and soul into it. And like, it doesn't matter that if it's only one bite on the plate, that's all you need to like
Yeah.
taste the
Well, there are
differences,
just so
notice the
many
difference.
components that go into that one bite and so much love from the person who put it together that it makes it taste better.
Yeah,
You can
for
tell.
sure. You can totally tell. You can totally tell. And there definitely were moments where I was like, okay, this is a treat that we're getting fed on this event, you know, versus like getting fed on it when you're working at a Marriott and they like set you up at a vendor table in the back and and like you get your 30 minutes to eat your meal and it's just like, oh, slop.
Butter.
Yeah, it's just butter. It's all it is. I don't want to throw another curve ball at you too much, but I was hoping I could ask you maybe if we swing back to talking about mixology a little bit,
Sure.
like your top 3 favorite cocktails to make. Like if somebody came in to any establishment where you were working and was like, make me your favorite things, like make me one of your favorite things to make, like something that you enjoy making, what would like your top 3 be?
Top 3. So I guess if we're barring any sort of like house cocktail, like something that's specific, we're talking about just classics.
Yeah. Classic.
Number
That's
one,
classics.
number one would absolutely be a sidecar. Number 2 would probably be Negronis and like variations on Negronis. I'm a huge fan of mezcal Negronis. I had one when we had drinks the other night. I think
Yeah.
but also, you know, Boulevardier, any sort of Negroni variation is exciting for me because there are just like so many different things you can do for like what one would think is a pretty basic cocktail.
Right.
Number 3, daiquiris. Because again, that's another one that you can really just kind of switch things out and make variations on it to like cater it to a person.
Yeah.
So yeah,
When
sidecar is my tried and true.
how do you make a sidecar? Do you have like a little twist on it that you do, or is it just like what's your go-to recipe for a classic sidecar? I don't even know if I've had a sidecar before.
So it's a cognac cocktail. You can also use brandy if you're going down the classic route. Generally, I keep it really simple. I just do like a 2-1-1 build, like 2 ounces of your cognac or brandy, 3/4, maybe like a scant ounce of orange liqueur. So in that case, you can use anything from like Cointreau to, if you want something more rich and sweeter, you could use Grand Marnier. I actually prefer to use dry Curacao because I don't like a lot of sweetness, and I think that it balances better with the cognac, and you get more of that like oaky cognac flavor. Whereas when you use the sweeter ones like Cointreau or any other sort of orange liqueur, it can kind of just like mask all of that flavor that you get from the barrel.
Mhm.
And lemon juice, 1 ounce of lemon juice. So just 2-1-1. You can throw a little bitters in there if you're feeling spicy. But I think there's something to be said for like really simply made cocktails with the right ingredients and
Yeah.
the high quality ingredients.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and for like, so for a daiquiri, so I don't think I've ever had a daiquiri that's not like a frozen daiquiri,
Yeah.
like a poolside outdoor summer
Yeah.
kind of thing.
So that's not what I'm
You're
talking
talking about
about.
like a shaken
No,
daiquiri.
I'm talking about a classic daiquiri, which
Yeah.
almost the same. But instead of I would actually generally do about the same build, like a 2-1-1. So you would have like 2 ounces of your rum, whatever rum of your choice, maybe a scant ounce of lime juice, and like actually not 2-1-1, like 2-1/2, and then 1/2 ounce of simple syrup. So you've got your base spirit, your citrus, and your sugar.
Okay. Gotcha.
And bitters. I generally add bitters in my daiquiris too.
Well, you're gonna have to make me one of those next time we hang out because that sounds delicious. You really have turned me like enticed me into the mezcal Negronis though. Like the next time we hang out, I'm definitely getting one of
Oh, they're
those because
delicious.
I have ventured into mezcal a little bit myself, but besides just trying mezcal by itself, I've only tried a mezcal margarita, which I it was okay, but like I expect a certain thing with a margarita with tequila, and I feel like
Yeah.
when I had the mezcal one, I was like, meh, I don't
It
know.
really depends. Mezcal has such a spectrum too. It's like in the way I look at it is that it's similar to like scotch in
Yeah,
a way that you get some scotches that are like really muted and drinkable, and some of them like really punch you in the face with that peat. So with mezcals, it's kind of the same way. You're going to have more mild mezcals that are good, that I would say are good for mixing. And then you're going to have some mezcals that are just so smoky and overpowering for any other ingredient that
yeah,
it makes sense to mix them. That's really something to be enjoyed, just sipped on, like maybe with a big ice cube. But once you start adding other flavors in there, it can kind of it just like becomes muddy.
yeah, yeah. So pretty much like just like scotch, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that
I
makes sense.
think with if you want to do a mezcal margarita though, is to just ask your bartender to do half and half, like half mezcal and half like silver tequila. And then you're going to get a little bit of that smoke flavor, but it's maybe not going to overpower you so much. That's what I do, at least when
Cool.
people are like, I don't know if I like mezcal, and I'm like, well, try it this way.
Yeah, yeah. Introduce
Yeah,
yourself to it a little bit.
yeah.
Introduce yourself. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for
Thank you
having me.
for doing this episode with me. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. You can find her serving up delicious craft cocktails and eats at Tiny Bar Providence, which is a cool outdoor spot if you want to go out and hang out in Providence. And you can also, if you're lucky enough to be in the know, you can find some of her homemade baked goods, which are fantastic. The English muffins are. I don't even I don't know. I don't have words to talk about them, but it's the best breakfast sandwich that I've ever had on that English muffin. Um, you can check out some of the stuff that she makes and some of her baked goods on her Instagram at Analise in Wonderland. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Analise Stettner. It's been a pleasure, and have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.